The Brusilov Offensive during the Great War saw the Russian Empire's last great offensive against the Central Powers. The offensive was commanded by General Alexei Brusilov, who used innovative tactics for the time that would probably be very obvious today, but most other generals believed that they were commanding the final wave in Plants vs. Zombies and did human wave attacks against entrenched machine guns without thinking things through. The offensive had resulted in Russia taking the Galicia region of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and making massive gains against the Austro-Hungarians, which then became completely reliant on the Germans. Austria-Hungary was in chaos, and Germany diverted troops to the Eastern Front instead of sending more men to fight at Verdun in the Western Front. Despite these successes, however, Russia would lose a crapload of men unnecessarily, as General Evert did not follow Brusilov's tactics to fully exploit the Central Powers' front lines. Brusilov had used smaller, specialized units to attack weak points in the Austro-Hungarian trench lines and blow open holes for the rest of the army to advance into. These were a remarkable departure from the human wave attacks, as Brusilov was not an idiot like a lot of the other generals of the war were, who had made human wave attacks the dominant strategy of all major armies until that point during World War I. Evert, however, was the opposite of Brusilov and used conventional tactics that were to prove very costly and indecisive, thereby costing Russia its chance for victory in 1916 against Austria-Hungary. The irony was that other Russian commanders did not realize the potential of the tactics that Brusilov had devised. Similar tactics were proposed separately by the French, Germans, and British on the Western Front and employed various times during the Battle of Verdun earlier in 1916. However, the tactic would henceforth just be used in greater degree by the Germans, who used stormtroopers and infiltration tactics to a very great effect in 1918 during the German Spring Offensive. So, in an alternate timeline, we can either have Evert be replaced or conform to Brusilov's tactics in order to create a Russian success against Austria-Hungary. This offensive drained all of Russia's offensive capabilities, partially due to the human wave attacks which occurred. Russia also saw the offensive as a diversion for Verdun and did not fully exploit areas which they could have. So another changed condition is that Russia plans to fully force Austria-Hungary out of the war in this alternate Brusilov offensive. In this alternate timeline, Austria-Hungary surrenders in 1916, but more so they capitulate in 1916. However, Russia still uses all of its offensive capabilities. Russia is now greatly appreciated by the other Entente powers, as now Germany must uphold the entire Eastern Front without the Austro-Hungarian manpower. Russia would also receive more foreign support to replace what they had lost, as Russia has now done a lot of the heavy lifting to end the Great War. The Austro-Hungarian Empire would have wanted to sign a peace deal to preserve the empire, but nationalism in all of the different regions of the empire would say otherwise, as the empire begins to divide following the death of Emperor Franz Joseph in November of 1916. The emperor was really the only thing keeping the empire together at this point, and now under Karl I, the empire was barely functioning, essentially existing in name only, as separatism occurs in pretty much every different region of the empire. German forces would likely move into Bohemia/Czechoslovakia to restore the front line against the Russians. This sees a larger German diversion from the Western Front than we saw in our timeline, and Austrian troops are likely folded into the German army, while those of other nationalities are probably going to take up arms for their own nations. But for Germany, things are really not looking good at all. The Germans can hold the line against the Italian front just fine, but the chaos to Germany's south, combined with the depletion of the Western Front and possibility of a future potential Russian onslaught in the east, puts the Kaiser in a very tough spot. The internal post-Austro-Hungarian Empire chaos of the Balkans and South-Central Europe would be very hard to predict, and it's likely so chaotic that the Joker couldn't even make sense of it. Yugoslavia secedes from the empire in a separatist war, followed by another civil war for whatever ideologies spark up in this alternate Yugoslavia. Galician troops join the Russian army with promises for a new state under Russian protection. Austro-Hungarian Polish legions are divided between who would back an independent Poland after the war. Hungarian forces just kind of want to stay in Hungary and fight the Russians if they cross the Carpathian Mountains, as well as any other group that tries to enter Hungarian territory. It's likely that Russia doesn't want to touch Austria-Hungary since they dropped out of the war. The former empire is just a powder keg, and rationally Russia should just stay out, but who knows what they would do since there are a lot of irrational idiots in the Russian high command. Assuming Russia keeps away from the empire's corpse, they transfer remaining troops to the German and Ottoman fronts for defenses. It's unknown how the rest of the war goes, but I'll speculate that the Entente wins in 1917 or in early 1918 due to the Salonika front no longer being needed and a lighter Western front. There's possibly no Russian Revolution, but still a provisional government transformation as a result of the successful Brusilov Offensive. Overall, it's impossible to determine the peace deals as the Austro-Hungarian Empire falls into madness in the post-war era, and there's just a lot of unknown moving factors and unknown determinants in this alternate timeline. But of course, that's just one possible scenario for if the Brusilov Offensive had successfully dropped Austria-Hungary out of the war. What do you think would have happened had the Brusilov Offensive forced Austria-Hungary out of the Great War in 1916? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.